continuation from the ground academics you had with Chris the other day, where you talked a lot about approach rate symbology, all those things. And he talked about the different types of approaches, specifically the GPS approaches versus the radio navigate approaches, which are your ILSs and your VORs and like that. So we're going to delve into the GPS approaches a little bit in detail first, to talk specifically about the difference between an LPV and an LNAV plus V and then an LNAV VNAV, why there are differences. And so if you could pull up Gainesville RNAV to runway 11. We're going to use that as an example. Some have DA, some have MDA, right? So you learned what the difference was between a DA and MDA yesterday. So we're going to talk, first off, there's the LPV. And this is in the family of GPS approaches. We're just going to call them RNAV approaches.
You said RNAV runway what?
11. LPV, we're going to talk the LNAV, VNAV. We're going to talk LNAV plus V. LPV, LNAV plus V. Also the LP plus V. And so these are types of RNAV approaches you're going to see out there. I think that's pretty much encompasses all the ones that we need to talk about for the GPS approaches, RNAV approaches. And I'll also, on the board here, I'm going to draw up kind of, you've got your radio, I just call them radio approaches, that requires ground signals, right? So you got your ILS is the main one, ILS. You also have the VOR, right? And you also have your localizer approach, and localizer is encompassing the ILS as well, but there's also the glide path, the glide slope that the ILS gives you. So they talk about where on the field the signals are coming from to give you the ILS and VOR?
Kinda. He said that once there's better weather, he would drive me out there.
Yeah. So I'll really quickly draw up the, because it'll be useful. So here's the runway right here. And this is runway 36 at Ocala. And on runway 36, we have an ILS. Because that ILS...
I think you said one of them was next to the PAPI lights and the other
Correct.
one was like somewhere way down the field or something.
Yep, so you got your PAPI right here, you got your two whites and your two reds down here somewhere, and about 1,000 feet down. So let me draw it a little bit commensurate down where it would be. PAPIs are down there, about 1,000 feet down, and that kind of shows that you're on glide path. In some areas, the PAPIs are coincident with the glide slope. In some areas, they're not. If it's not, it'll be listed on the plate that it's not. Most are, so we'll assume for the discussion today that it is. Your glide slope is actually located right there at the PAPI. And it's actually on the runway there, close to the runway. I'll put it in green right there. It's somewhere, it's a box out there that just shoots a signal up, and based on if you're higher or lower, there's frequency modulation that your radio is tuned into to make sure it kind of keeps you on path, or at least gives you an indication of being high or low with the 1 dot, 2 dot rule there, right? So that's where the glide slope is, GS. This pen is going away pretty soon. Know that one. So GS for glide slope. The localizer has to go right down the center of the runway. So that's going to be located at the opposite end of the runway right there. So it can give you a signal right down the middle of the runway.
That's for your lateral guidance?
All the way out for your lateral guidance. That's correct. That's a localizer.
The localizer only does lateral guidance.
Correct.
And the ILS uses the glide slope and the localizer to give you both?
That's correct. ILS is both localizer and glide slope. Localizer only obviously doesn't have a glide slope.
Yeah.
But you'll have the ILS with both. So so let's talk localizer. Glide slope is the vertical. I'm going to draw this runway this way. This is the grandstand view, and you've got the glide slope is going to go up like this at 3 degrees. Most of the time 3 degrees. Could be off a little bit, but most around the country 3 degrees. So glide slope here is the localizer here. As you get closer to the runway, it actually angles in such that the tolerances become more sensitive as you get closer.
Accurate.
It gets more accurate. So it funnels in, just like this.
Yeah.
And this. As you get closer, it funnels in. That's what the localizer does.
The VOR does the same thing, right?
The VOR does not.
But doesn't it?
The VOR does get more sensitive. It gets more
accurate as you get closer to it.
It gets more sensitive as you get closer, but it doesn't.
It's not the same effect.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not as refined as this. It's not going to be going down to a point. And the VOR on our field is actually located right here. So when you do the VOR approach in Ocala, you're going kind of at an angle here towards that VOR. And it does get more sensitive. But let's stick with ILS for a second. You got 2 dots if you're out here at 3 miles, you know, on your scope, the 2 dots left and right may be this far apart, right, out there. As you get closer, they get closer together here. And so that the distance-wise, if you're off 50 feet, it's going to show up as a greater scale deflection on your CDI needle, right? That's what the localizer does. Glide slope does the same thing. Brings you in like this and like this, okay? Funnels you into a point that's, you know, roughly 200 feet AGL for the decision altitude for the missed approach point, okay? That's what ILS does. VOR, similar, but it's not as accurate. Talk about localizer. Now, I'm gonna, on this green needles here, you have the green is for the ground signals. And Chris talked about green ground, right? Green ground signals. So we're gonna assume ILS. Now we're gonna superimpose these RNAV. I'm gonna put these in probably purple and magenta, some colors, because it's magenta on your CDI. Turns magenta when we're in the GPS mode. And we'll talk about the LPV first. LPV is the most like an ILS, is that it funnels down this way and this way. It gives you really good guidance. Do you know how it gets its guidance? The LPV?
No.
So I'm gonna draw the Earth here in brown, right here. There's a good old Earth, right? Here, right? And there's all the lines here. So we're somewhere looking on the Earth. You got the satellites out there. You got some satellites out here, kind of in medium Earth orbit. They're not low Earth orbit, they're not geostationary, but the GPS satellites, 24, at least 24 at any given time. I think there's a couple redundant ones out there too, but the 24 that gives you coverage over the entire globe, right? They fly around at medium Earth orbit. And it's not geostationary, it's not low Earth orbit where the space shuttle was, the space station is, and all that, but it's a medium Earth orbit. And obviously these satellites out here, they give you triangulated position on the globe, right? It takes 3 of these, anywhere here, 1, 2, 3, to give you a position on the globe, and that's how we know our lateral kind of position. It does require a 4th one, however, to give you a little bit of altitude. Can't just do it with 3. The 4th one's required for the altitude, okay? That can give you enough guidance to shoot a GPS approach, right? But in order for so there's SBAS system, the satellite-based system, and there's a GBAS, the ground-based augmentation system, GBAS. Satellite-based is what we just covered, right? There's also, in addition to that, I'll put in purple here, ground-based stations located all over, okay, as well. Those ground-based stations take this
Ground-based GPS stations?
ground-based repeaters. They listen to the satellites and they send it back up.
Okay.
So signal comes down, hits this station, takes it back up, and it bounces off as many satellites as it can see. It gives information back and forth. So the ground-based systems also goes up, down, talks to your airplane. All that stuff is talking with each other and to your airplane. So the ground-based system allows us to now get really good fidelity for where you are above the ground. Not just from satellite view, kind of shooting a 18,000 mile shot of where you are altitude-wise, not very accurate, but with ground-based system, we can refine that very well. So the GBAS coupled with the SBAS gives you the ability to, no kidding, shoot an LPV down to about, some of them are down to about 200 foot minimums, just like an ILS. And I'll put it in purple here. It's gonna funnel in just like this, and it's also gonna funnel in just like this. It's going to give you refined guidance all the way around. It's the most like the ILS, and sometimes it's down to 200 foot minimums. Okay, that one's pretty easy, but it requires both the ground-based and the satellite-based to be working. Now, my question is, well, let's talk about this first. Let's talk about LNAV, VNAV. LNAV, VNAV is also gives you lateral and vertical guidance, but it's not as refined as the LPV. You're not going to get localizer performance. So the LNAV, VNAV, I'm going to draw in pink on this one. LNAV gives you lateral guidance, but it doesn't funnel in like this. It just gives you kind of a broad swath into the runway environment, runway area. And so your needle doesn't get more sensitive as you get closer to the runway like it does on an LPV. It just kind of straight lines in. So that if you're off that much here, it's going to be the same needle deflection as you're off there. So it doesn't get more refined guidance. That's the biggest thing with LNAV. VNAV is the same thing. VNAV kind of gives you this kind of broad swath of guidance that goes down, but it doesn't refine you down to a point like the LPV would. All right, that's what LNAV VNAV does. That's why, since it's less accurate, the minimums are going to be higher.
Much higher, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now, that's LNAV VNAV. And this LNAV VNAV is using, this VNAV here is actually using satellite-based and ground-based to help you refine, but the accuracy is not there to give you LPV guidance. That's why it's degraded down to the LNAV VNAV. Now, did you talk about LNAV plus V and what that was?
A little bit.
You know what the plus V means?
Plus vertical guidance?
It does. It does. So you have LNAV for lateral navigation, and then you have the plus V. Is it coming from satellites or coming from somewhere else?
The satellites.
It's not. It's actually the plus V is your airplane.
Oh, the airplane just makes it up.
This is your Cirrus. It's very smart.
I think I heard him say that. Yeah.
Your Cirrus can build a 3-degree glide slope off anything it wants to.
Yeah, it just figures it out.
And it figures out what 3 degrees looks like and gives you that advisory guidance. It's an advisory guidance is what it's called. So the advisory guidance does kind of the same thing. It gives you put it blue here, kind of give you a guidance all the way down. But it's the plus V, but it's your airplane that's actually building this line right here.
Yeah.
3 degrees.
It's like made up.
Yep. LP is localizer performance plus your aircraft guidance. So LP does funnel in like this laterally, but the plus V means it's just going to be a aircraft generator. That's the difference in the different types of GPS approaches. Now looking at RNAV 11 into Gainesville, tell me what the LPV minimums are on that one.
460.
460 MSL, right? What is it AGL?
311.
Yeah. So
what's in the parentheses?
That's the weather required to shoot the approach. You need at least 401 weather.
400
has to be 400
foot
or
cloud
higher
base
ceiling.
Oh, okay.
401 knob visibility.
But the 313 is the
That's correct.
AGL?
Yep, the small number outside the parentheses is the AGL. So 313 feet above the ground is the LPV. What's the LNAV VNAV minimums?
600.
AGL?
450.
Good, a little bit higher. And what's the LNAV?
The same as the LNAV.
Same? Okay, good. So why wouldn't I just shoot the LPV approach every time? Why do you think that gives me options?
Because the weather minimums are different?
Sure, but the LPV goes down to the lowest minimums, right? 401. So why wouldn't I just use that all the time to get down to the lowest possible?
Because if the weather minimums are higher for the other one.
They would be, yeah, because there's a higher MBA on those.
Maybe your plane isn't working properly.
Right.
Some system is malfunctioning.
A system malfunctioning, probably going to be the satellite's malfunctioning, or weather, solar storms, things like that.
Or your interceptor with the satellites is malfunctioning.
Something, yeah. Maybe there's a GPS jammer of some kind. Something that's going to degrade your ability to get this fidelity of approach for LPV will cause your aircraft to revert to an LNAV VNAV or maybe just an LNAV plus V.
And it would tell you?
So let's talk about where it shows up on your scope here. Let me put it black. I'm running out of board space here. But here is your PFD.
Mm-hmm.
And you got your just side there. You got your you got your airspeed, altitude. You got your bar across the top here. Autopilot will say it's on. We're in GPS mode and we're in out. Kind of cruising into the final approach 6 area.
Mm-hmm.
You got your horizon line here, right? You got your something like that. You got your dots. That's roughly where it tells you. And you get your CDI needle, right? Chris talked about. Okay, it's going to tell you right here in your scope. So if it's looking at LPV and it can fly it, it's going to say,
well, like that's
in magenta.
Like, because you would have activated the LPV approach.
You would have loaded
the approach.
The RNAV approach.
Yeah.
The RNAV.
But you would choose LPV, or it would give you the best one it can use.
True statement. That one. Yeah.
Okay.
It gives
so you pick the approach, and it gives you the best one it can use.
Correct. When you actually load the approach, we haven't talked about loading and all that stuff yet, but when you load
I've done that.
It doesn't give you the option of LNAV, VNAV, or LPV. It just says RNAV.
RNAV, run 111.
Yeah. So when you load the RNAV, we won't know until you reach the initial fix, where your aircraft does a systems check to see.
But how would you know which minimums to use then?
You look right here. So if it says LPV.
But you have to type in your minimums before you load the approach.
You do. So you do.
So you're just assuming that you're going to use the best one until it tells you otherwise and you change your minimums?
Correct. So let's assume that this is real world. We're loading an RNAV approach. You shoot it down to 400 foot minimums, roughly. Okay.
460.
Then we would load the RNAV approach.
RNAV 11.
And we're going to look
We
to
would
make sure
assume that we're going to use the LPV.
We're going to make
put
sure
in the
it gives
minimums
us,
and then confirm it at the end.
correct. We're going to make sure it gives us LPV minimums if that's what we have to have.
Okay.
Now, if we're flying the approach and there's some satellite issues of some kind, there's no warning. It's just going to show here
LNAV.
LNAV, VNAV, or LNAV
And then would
plus V.
you just know to use different minimums, or would you go back in and change your minimums?
You would go back in and change it because you would look at this sheet and say, oh crap, I don't have LPV fidelity of satellite.
Yeah, and you go, oh shit,
signals
I need
today.
to use 600 instead
That's
of 460.
exactly right. So you go back in and change.
What do you
it
say,
to
plus
600.
50? For safety buffer?
Yes. So when we actually fly it, we're going to start a level off 50 feet high, and then we're going to sneak down to about 20 feet high and then cruise on in. For check-out purposes,
Just because you don't
20
want to
feet's
bust
good.
the...
Correct.
Well, you don't want to bust the MDA. The DA doesn't matter?
The DA is where you begin your go-around. You can go below that during the go-around process. That's correct. Before you make your decision at the decision altitude. Yep, that's right. So you look here at some point on your approach to make sure you've got the fidelity to shoot the approach you're trying to shoot.
Yeah.
For training,
You like
I've
double
never
check.
seen this degrade in the airplane. I've never seen satellites degrade to a point where I've actually seen LNAV plus
switch.
V on an LPV approach.
Yeah.
On an RNAV approach, it has an LPV guidance. It's always worked. But for training, we will say, okay, we're gonna shoot this one as an LNAV plus V, or we're gonna shoot this one as an LNAV VNAV just for
You would
training.
just plug the different minimums in.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
That's really the only difference. You fly
Yeah.
basically.
It's the same approach, it's just different minimums.
You fly different minimums, and you fly the.
Because the plane for all of them makes it seem the same. Because it just gives you the vertical guidance no matter what.
It will give you the vertical guidance, even if it's a plus V aircraft generated vertical guidance, as long as it's not a crazy 3.5, 4 degree guidance, which the aircraft may not give you that vertical guidance, which are some approaches that are like that. It may not give you the advisory guidance because Garmin says, I'm not going to give you that. It's too out of the ordinary or too steep. Most of the cases, it will provide you that guidance. Now, which one of these has a DA? Which one of these has MDAs? Let's walk through these.
The first two have DAs.
Good. And this has MDAs, right? Good. Yep. And then DAs, we can go down below slightly as we do our missed approach, make a decision to go around. And MDA.
The MDA you bust if you go below it at all.
You do. Correct.
It's a plus whatever minus 0.
Plus 100 minus 0. Yep. Where's the missed approach point on a non-precision approach where you're going to an MDA?
The runway?
It is. Actually, most of the time it's the end of the runway.
Like the beginning of the runway.
That's what I meant. Yes, the approach of the runway, I should say. Yep, most of the time it's the approach of the runway. So you're driving in, and we'll talk about this later, but
so you level off, and then once you hit that point, then you proceed to missed approach procedure.
That's the earliest opportunity for you to make a lateral change towards the missed approach point. You can actually execute your go around anytime. We put it in red just for contrast. You can actually execute your go around anytime in here.
Oh, you just can't veer off course.
You can't turn laterally until you reach the missed approach point, which
for
is
safety
the end of the
purposes.
Correct, because the missed approach instructions
Start
begin
there. Yeah, okay.
at that missed approach point,
Understood.
which in those approaches are the end of the runway. We'll talk about my techniques for when to go around on those as well. We used to teach just drive it straight ahead until you see runway 110.0 up here. You know you're there. You can actually go around, give you time to kind of breathe a little bit, drive it in. You can totally do that and then go missed approach there. Or you can anywhere in here where you realize you're not going to make a safe landing if you broke out. You can just start to go around at that point. Just don't turn laterally until you reach that point. All right, that's big picture on types of approaches, why they can degrade down to, and where should be displayed at. Make sense?
Yep.
Cool. All right. Take a photo, or are you good?
Sure, why not? Good. Hello?
Okay. Did Chris go through the loading process at all yesterday?
Like how to load it in the plane?
Yeah. Have you loaded?
I've done it a few times.
Okay,
I did a instrument flight with Chris, and then I did a couple with Wham.
It's better to do that in the sim. I won't talk about it on the board. It's pretty simple. You've done it a couple times, so I'll talk mainly about philosophy.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'll talk mainly about philosophy, getting up to the approach point, and getting.
I
up
really
shooting
would
the
like to
approach.
understand the
Like
I really
shooting
would
the
like to
approach.
understand the like the power settings, when I need to slow down, when I
Good.
need to start doing stuff like that. Like, I'm fine with the avionics. The avionics I'm
Good.
pretty rock solid on. But it's more the procedures.
Yep, we're gonna walk through that. First off, everything kind of begins 30 minutes out. Did Chris talk about that?
Yeah.
He did?
A while ago, but yeah.
All right, when you're 30 minutes from your destination, for us, it's about 80 miles.
Start
89
figuring
miles.
your life
Start
out. Planning
going
for
through
descent.
planning
or
for
planning
the approach,
for landing.
planning for the descent, planning, getting everything loaded, getting the weather. It all starts with weather, getting the weather first
Yeah.
off. So tuning your
I've
ATIS.
been kind of like trying to get in the habit of that even when I fly VFR. Like if I
Yeah,
see 30 minutes,
100%.
well, most of my flights are 30 minutes or less, but still. I'll look at the runway. I'll try to, check the weather, plan my, landing and whatnot.
This is kind of the flow Chris talks about. He may have a couple extras in here. I'll try to kind of talk through them as I go, but get your weather first off, and that's going to tell you what runway you're going to be landing on, right? That's the main thing. And get your brain oriented. Okay, I'm going from this direction. Get your mindset ready for that runway. You can also plan your descent at that point as well to think about how far I need to descend. You know what the rule of thumb is for how far out to descend? Like if you're at 8,000 feet, going down to minimums in Gainesville.
3,000 feet for every 3 miles.
Yeah,
At 500
altitude
feet
to
per minute.
lose times 3, and then pad that by.
And then you add 3 miles because you want to be at your altitude. Well, this is for VFR, but
Yeah, for instruments, you want to be kind of final approach fix
it
altitude.
depends on what
certain time.
altitude they want you at, where or whatever.
And in most cases, you'll be at final approach fix altitude at about 10 miles out. It's kind of a good rule of thumb. So you go 10 miles out, I need to be at this altitude. So if you 8,000,
You just do the math.
2,000,
Yeah.
6,000, yeah. So you do the math in 3-degree or the rule of threes work pretty good. That plans of descent, and then get yourself a plan A and plan B. So plan A means maybe I want to shoot the ILS for runway 29. My plan B might be with the RNAV 29 in case the ILS is out and it wasn't noted out. It could have gone out for some reason, maybe the maintenance or something, the switch was off, something.
So you would like brief
Tower,
both of them?
Tower can actually turn that on. You can actually brief one of them, but have a game plan in your mind for,
Just in
the
case.
backup. Then you can brief the backup, whenever. You can totally brief the other one if you want, but we generally just brief the one, but have a hip pocket backup.
Just know
plan.
that you would use that one if something happened.
Yep. Another way is if it's a direct crosswind, and they could change runways on you. Maybe you want to kind
brief
of think
both.
about the other.
Yeah, the
other runway
opposite
just in
runway.
case.
Mhm.
Just to kind of just be familiar with what you might have to do, turning opposite direction. That's
Mm-hmm.
plan A, plan B. Then we'll load it. We're not going to talk a lot about loading it, but when you do load it, if you look at your approach plate, you really need just 2 pieces of information to load it, which is going to be your IAF and the minimums. With that information, you can actually load the approach. If you use the procedure button to load the approach,
Well, I think someone was saying that you should just always plug it in as vectors, just in case they switch you to vectors or the opposite, maybe
yeah.
something like that.
So, yeah.
So you always pick an IAF, and then you can always switch to vectors later, or something like that.
That's the way we teach. I've heard of some people always loading vectors because it opens up IAFs that you can potentially go to. I haven't tried that method yet.
I feel like I don't know who sold me that, but I
I've
feel
heard
like
that-
someone said that one of the ways you can always go back, the other way you have to start over.
Correct. And the way we're teaching you, which is always load an IAF initially, is going to give you the most options with the least amount of button pushes. So always load an IAF is what we'll say, wherever direction you're coming in from. Even though you know you're going to get vectors, plug in the IAF that's on that side of the airfield.
Just in case they change their mind.
Correct. Because a lot of times, hey, for traffic, I need you to go ahead and proceed direct manzo or whatever.
Yeah.
And
And
you can
you're
go
like,
ahead and
shit,
catch
I
that.
already plugged in vectors, and now I have to start over.
That's correct. Yep. You have to actually reload it to get
Reload
manzo
the
back
whole
in
thing,
there.
yeah.
So load it, and then at some point we're going to activate the approach. You can go procedure activate, and if you activate the approach by just going procedure activate, where does your GPS guidance take you to?
Whatever your IAF you chose was.
Correct. It takes you right to the
But
IAF.
you wouldn't activate it until you're cleared for the approach.
Until you're cleared to that IAF, you could activate the approach.
Okay.
Okay, so there's load, activate, and then arm, which is what you're thinking about. So hang by 1 second. Load first. We're just going to load it because we're proceeding direct to the airport initially. And then when it clears to the IF, we'll activate it. It's going to take us to the IF now.
And then ARM is when you click it onto autopilot.
Nope. arm is when you actually hit the approach button when you're cleared for the approach.
But like on the autopilot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Arm, when you hear the word cleared, hit that approach button, APR button.
Okay, that's going to give you your vertical guidance.
That allows you to descend.
Because before that, you're just having guidance to the IAF.
What's going to happen is they're going to give you guidance to the IAF. We'll draw this up real quick here so we can kind of see. R11 is here. This is Gainesville. You got a fix there. You got a fix here. Then off that fix, you got these feeder fixes like this. I think this is Manzo. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Which side are you on? Yes, Manzo. The other side is Kozoi.
Yeah, so we're initially proceeding directly to the airport with our magenta line going to the airport like that. And when they clear us direct to Manzo, we just need to
would activate
just
the approach.
activate it and make sure
you would already hypothetically have Manzo put in there.
And if you're still in GPS mode, the airplane's gonna turn you directly
to Manzo. And
now
then they'll clear you for the approach, and then you click arm.
Correct. At some point approaching Manzo, they're going to say, hey,
you click the approach button.
They're going to say, you're 5 miles from Manzo, maintain 3,000 to establish, you're cleared.
Cleared RNAV, runway 11.
Yep. And so that's when you
hit
the APR button.
Cool.
Put a circle there, I swear, because it's a button.
Yeah.
That's important. It's often missed. You're going to miss it a dozen times, and we're going to laugh and laugh. But it's the hardest thing to remember to do because you're approaching Manzo. You're thinking about your next descent point. You're trying to repeat back that crazy radio call he just made to you. And you're thinking about all those things, and you'll forget to hit this button. I guarantee it. It'll happen. We're going to laugh. It's going to be funny, but you'll get yourself to where as he's making that radio call, he says, cleared, hit the button before he finishes his radio call. So you don't forget it, and you can actually...
Then you can read back what he said.
As soon as you hit the APR button, your eyes are going to go right up here. You want to make sure, I'm going to put this in red for contrast, that you hit a GP in this case over here. And if you happen to be in heading mode, kind of approaching a vectors to final, and you happen to be in a heading mode, we'll say, then you also want to make sure this is GPS here. So the GPS is armed, and also the glide path is armed.
And then it'll catch them.
It will catch them when you touch the magenta line. That's correct. Or when you actually reach the glide path, in this case. Good? All right. Now we're getting to the point where you wanted to talk about power settings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Up to this point, it's fairly simple. All this is in my white paper as well, by the way, so you can read that.
It's what?
In my white paper. You've downloaded my white paper and read it, right? Please tell me in your instrument training, your Pure P, you've downloaded my white paper.
I just started my instrument training yesterday.
Who didn't tell you about my white paper?
Nobody tells me anything.
All right, purepaviation.com. On the training tab, flight training tab, there is a instrument procedures white paper, probably 5 pages long.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not a big reading
totally
guy.
read through that. You should have totally read through that.
Flight training, instrument procedures.
Yep. So download that to your iPad there. Breeze through it whenever you want.
11 pages?
That's right, baby. There's kids watching this video, man. You just cursed.
Oh. Yeah, you're going to have fun editing.
I got to dub that out now. All right. So
these things need to be like fancier and have auto like bleep.
Yeah. So we are now, I'm going to draw it this way because I always draw it this way. We're established now on final. That's where we're going to start this discussion at. You're cleared from Manzo. You're clear for the approach. You've hit the approach button. And now the aircraft is now set up. For this descent. Okay. So this is a grandstand view now. Now we're talking mechanics of power settings, etc. Okay. In the SR-20, a good power setting for around the radar pattern is just 50% power. It's going to give you about 120 knots, nice comfortable speed, nice comfortable pace, not too fast, not too slow, and it gets you around the pattern, all right? So 50% power works pretty good. And we're going to keep that 50% power in there pretty much until we reach the final approach fix. Until we reach the, final approach fix.
So are you pulling to 50% power when you get to your first IAF?
So now we're back to the descent.
Let's
talk about the descent a little bit, okay? So we're descending. You plan your descent rate.
You're descending from whatever
You're descending from 8,000 down to 3,000. Okay?
In preparation to hit that initial approach fix?
Correct, yes. Okay. So we're approaching Manzo. We're descending from 8,000 down to 3,000 now. Is it 3,000 at Manzo? I think it is.
2,000.
Is it 2? Okay, we'll say we're 3,000. They say cross to 3,000. So we're descending to 3,000. My first level off 3,000 EG or below, when I first level off, I set 50% and I do my landing checks. Do a backwards question mark, landing checks, boost pump, switch
And that's
tank.
standard.
Standard.
You're always, when you level off at your, wherever they tell you to, you're always pulling back to 50%. That's like the beginning of your approach.
When I'm beginning the approach, I'm approaching the initial approach fix. Yes, that's when I pull to 50% as I'm leveling off because your speed.
Because it's like
probably 150
you're in the
knots
pattern almost type of thing.
Correct. That's where you're thinking.
Okay.
You're not going to find the radar patterns.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Understood.
50% power works, and I do my landing checks at that point, so don't forget them. I'll also do my landing check here and here just to make sure I didn't forget them.
Make sure
it's
you
just
didn't forget.
three different memory joggers to make sure I don't forget to boost pump and all that stuff.
Are you saying with your other 2 points, like the other times you're descending to the other spots or whatever?
No.
Or just you have specific places where you do them?
It's just when I think about putting flaps out in a second, I'm going to do my landing checks. When I catch a glide slope, I'm also just going to make sure it's all done. It should already be done, but that's 3 times that I'm mentally telling myself
just
to
in
think
case.
about it, just in case I missed it, because things get really busy.
Yeah, it's easy to forget.
On the radios, yeah. So, power's 50%, we're driving in here, and everything kind of slows down nicely, about 120 knots, and when you get 2.0 miles from the final approach fix, what's the final approach fix, by the way?
What's it called? Keys. Keezs.
Keezs. All right. Keys is final approach fix. It's right here. We're driving in. We're gonna shoot this as an LPV approach initially. Okay. Then we'll talk about the other ones. But LPV approach, 120 knots, flat 50%. We're driving in the 2.0 miles. I also want you to descend down to the final approach fix altitude in this, and final approach fix altitude is what? 17?
Yes.
1,700. So we're assuming we're already at 1,700 feet and we're driving in here to Keys. With me?
Yeah. It just looks, it has you at 2,000 and then to Lowry, and then it descends down to 1,700. It just looks a little differently than that. But
so past Lowry, yeah. Yeah, it does. So you're 2,000 feet till Lowry, and it descends down to 1,700 feet at Keys. Okay? We, in training, are going to use vertical speed to get ourselves down to 1,700 prior to Keys, and we're going to drive in at 1,700 towards Keys. Okay? You have the option to intercept glide path up at 3,000 feet all the way down.
Yeah.
But I want to teach you how these methods work out with these ranges here. We're going to go to final approach altitude for training. Okay? 1,700 feet, 120 knots, driving in, 2.0 miles. 2.0 miles is when we put flaps 50%. I kept my power at 50%. This is power. And my power stays at 50% even when I put flaps out.
2 miles from the field?
2.0 from the final approach fix. So let me draw this a little bigger here so you can kind of see what we're doing.
So up there on your scoreboard, it's going to tell you your distance to your
That's
next
exactly
point.
right. That's what I was getting ready to draw up here. Autopilot's on, we'll say. We are in...
well, you need space above that, I think.
It will be, correct. And we're in GPS mode here, and you're correct. This will say KEEZ. I'll put it in red here. KEEZ.
Yeah, it's like purple or something.
It'll be a little direct button there, and it'll be 2.0.
Yeah.
Right?
So when you see that 2.0, you go flaps 50.
Yeah.
And then you're going to check your, again?
That's correct. 2.0, flaps 50, landing checks. Okay? At about the same time, 2 miles occurs, you're going to start to see the diamond show. Let me finish.
The glide slope is going to catch?
Your glide slope will begin to be
active.
It will start to become seen on the scope.
Okay.
This right here. And we've got 2 dots. And at the top, as you're driving in, the diamond, it actually looks like a little V at the top there because it's kind of hidden at the top. And then as soon as you get around 2 miles or so, if you're at final approach altitude, this diamond will begin to march on the scope.
Climb down.
It'll start to, climb down. And it will obviously be, here is actually where it's on the glide slope. This is 2 dots above, 1 dot above, 1 dot below, 2 dots below. Okay? Or sorry, 2 dots below, 1 dot below, 1 above, 2 above. With me there? Because you're still below.
It's weird that it starts above it though. You're below the glide slope until you get above it.
That's exactly right.
Which
so we're
you're not
driving
going
in,
to.
that diamond begins to be seen.
Never mind, that makes sense.
Yep, driving in from below, right? Catching it. So that's where we're catching it. It's actually catching us as well.
Yeah.
Good. So I write this diamond right here in kind of quotes here because when I see 2 miles or I see the diamond here in full, that's when I go ahead and put flaps 50%.
Okay.
And that's
Either one, whichever comes first.
whichever one comes first. Here's why. If you're actually intercepting this for 3,000 feet,
You're
here,
going to get the diamond before you get to 2 miles.
100%. You're going to get the diamond first. So the diamond is my cue or my flaps.
Why would you be intercepting it at 3,000 feet?
Because you can. That's what we do in airlines all the time. I'll intercept it at 5,000 feet if I can, and I'll drive this down at 5,000 feet.
Oh, you
3
mean you
degrees
just
all the way
intercept it
down.
like way before?
Intercept it way out there.
Way
and
back
drive
there
down.
before you need it to be down low.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an option.
Yeah. Okay. Understood.
For training, we're going to go to final approach altitude. Okay. All right, but that's the reason 2 miles or the diamond. When it's 2 miles, you don't have to wait till 2.0. It's 2.2, 2.3.
Yeah.
You put the
It's
flaps
like
out.
when you're calling at 10 miles out or whatever.
Yeah,
once you get below
That's
11.
right. Because what's going to happen is you're going to wait for 2.0.
And it's too
they're going to
late.
make a radio call. You're going to respond to it. You're
gonna forget.
Put your flaps out. So
Yeah.
2 point something, put some flaps out, right?
Okay.
The
Understood.
airplane slows down nicely from here down to 100 knots. Slows down to 100 very nicely. Okay. You don't have to touch the power setting at all. Just keep it there. If you're manually flying it, then just avoid the balloon like you would in the pattern, and 100 knots right here. And then we're going to wait for the glide path to catch. So when the glide path captures, oh, by the way, in white, you're going to have GP, and you're going to have on the right-hand side there, it's in white, GP, right there. It's to let you know that it's going to actually capture the glide path. That GP came on when we hit the approach button, right? We checked for that. We're driving in now, and when the diamond captures, we're going to do 3 things. 1, 2, 3. I call this the big triangle, right? First thing we do is we pull our power back because we want to actually intercept and go down the glide slope, right? Power back to about 15%. 15%. I want to set my missed approach altitude, which I think is 2,000 feet for us on this approach.
2,000 feet.
Okay, 2,000 feet. And then I want to sync my heading bug.
Climb to 2,000 feet direct. Tukes.
Yeah, tusk. So 3 things. Power back, altitude select 2,000, and just sync my heading bug.
To basically the runway.
You sync the heading bug to your current heading. That puts you on the
Because you might
lateral
be crabbed.
navigation. Because if you got a 40-knot wind from the right,
You're crabbing to the side. But you want to stay going down center line, basically.
you do want to stay going down the center line. But that wind-corrected angle
Is what you want.
is what you want to keep you from getting blown off course.
Yeah, okay.
So once I'm established on, I'm intercepting, I just sync my heading bug, and it's going to be off a little bit from the runway heading, which it should be if you got a little crosswind. And that heading will
That'll
keep
keep
me,
you centered.
my aircraft will keep it crabbed down nicely down the
And
center
then
line.
you're also going to do another checklist.
Correct. Yep. Checklist down here. Good. Yep. You can run the checklist again here. I'll put the backwards question mark. It's there as well. Down to
Wait,
our
so you
nose.
do 1, 2, 3 once you catch the glide slope.
That's correct. Once you captures, first thing, power back. If you think about it, it's a triangle. Power comes back. My hand comes up to the altitude knob, and then to the heading.
Heading.
Just sync my
Boom,
heading. So
boom,
it's
boom.
1, 2, 3. It's kind of big triangles, what I call it. Then we're just driving down. Now, the airspeed that you want here is 90 to 100. If you want to pick an airspeed, I like 95. Let's just pick 95 just to be something to fly to. But 90 to 100 is fine. It's going to fluctuate a little bit due to wind, so I just put 95 here. And let's talk about the minimums on this one were 300 AGL,
460.
460, which is 300 AGL, I think, right?
315, yeah. 313.
Okay, so pretty close. So 460 is our DA, right? That's our DA. Driving down final, DA, we'll make a radio call to the tower. They'll probably send us the tower right before we get to keys. We'll make a radio call. Now we're just watching needles and waiting for the DA, okay? Did our landing checks, trimming out our airplane, nice and trimmed up. And if the autopilot is just flying it, already trimmed, and you're waiting for the DA. Let's talk about flaps. So flaps will stay at 50%
Because you want them for the go around like that?
until,
After your decision out. Until you see the runway.
if you see the runway above 500 feet, roll flaps to full.
If you find it below, you just land 50.
Just land flaps 50. Yep, if you're below 500 AGL and your
It'll
flaps...
throw off your approach too much.
Well, it's just...
It might.
If you're in the weather and you're not really comfortable throwing full flaps at low altitude, there's going to be the ballooning effect there, and it's a lot of
It might
airplane to
make
handle
your
for some
approach
people.
unstable.
And it could make your approach unstable, correct. So below 500 feet AGL, just land at flaps 50 if you break out. Above 500 AGL, you have the option to roll flaps full if you like. manage all the way down.
But even before, like if you have clear weather or something, obviously you would just land normally.
Yeah. So if you break out 800 feet, roll flaps full, land the thing. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Just okay, see the runway. That's your cue to, okay, flaps full and land it.
Understood.
Good. Now we're going down to the DA. I'll put it in green here. Once you approach the DA, once it actually reaches 460, you're going to hear a minimums call. And when you hear that, or you just look at 460, I don't wait for the minimums call audio, but I want to really hear, no kidding, 460. When it reaches 460, I'm making my decision. Can I see the runway? Yes or no? What are those 10 items that you need to see the runway? Chris talked about the 10 items. Runway lights, runway threshold lights, end lights. There's 10 items in the book that you can read up on.
Is it one of them?
Any one of those items
counts?
Is runway insight.
Okay,
Right.
Fair enough.
Now, there's the approach lights. That if you see the approach lights, you can continue down to 100 feet AGL, but you
The
have
approach lights are the ones coming out from the runway,
but you
like
have
the
to
white
see,
ones.
Yes, yep. But you have to see the runway in order to land.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Below that, right? So 200 feet AGL is normal, but in this case about 313 AGL. But you can actually drive down to 100 feet, but you have to see the runway to land. Or you have to go around.
AGL or MSL?
It's AGL. Because if you're Denver, Colorado, there's no 100 feet AGL. MSL.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Let's talk about the go around. So let's say we don't see it. We don't see anything. Still in the weather, and we're going to execute the go around. It's okay to dip slightly below as you're executing your go around, but you're not dipping below to see if you can see the runway. You're just making your decision at 460 and executing the go around. What do you use for the go-around phraseology? What do you personally use? I've got a couple that I use. I'll give you both of them, but I just want to see what you use. When you go around, you powers up. Do you have anything? I say toga power pitch. You ever heard of that one?
Oh, I just go around.
Okay, good.
I click the toga button and go around, but I don't have a phrase for it.
Yeah. So most people don't.
To be honest, I haven't gone around a whole lot of times in the Cirrus. That was a big 172 thing for me, but
yeah. So I'm going to give you a couple. And then I'll give you the one.
I honestly ought to do a few just to stay
toga,
proficient, but
power,
flaps,
pitch, flaps.
Well, you're in this situation. You're probably not having 100 flaps, so you don't really have to worry about it until later.
You'll be going around. What's flaps up speed?
85.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, normally, if you're going around and you're doing a normal landing, you have 100 flaps. So you'd go flaps way earlier.
You would.
Because you can't do anything with 100 flaps.
Yep. So let's just...
But in this situation, you probably don't have 100 flaps because you're going around under 500 feet. So you would have 50 flaps so you can go around and then get your flaps up later because you have to wait till 85 anyway.
You do, which is going to happen pretty quick. What I'm saying is it's often forgotten.
Because you're going 95.
Yeah. You are initially. So let's walk through this methodically, okay? Toga means what? It's the button. Often forgotten. People just go and don't push toga.
I like the button.
And the flight
I
directors
use it on departure as well. It's nice.
If you don't use the toga button, the flight directors keep you kind of level, right?
Yeah, I like it. Because if not, I pitch too high and I go too slow or something.
So toga is the button. Power simultaneously,
power.
right? Toga, power, pitch is physically moving your airplane to pitch.
To the toga line or the flight directors.
What does it give you?
What does what give you?
What does the pitch, how much pitch does the flight directors give you, is what I'm asking.
10 degrees? 15? 7. It's somewhere in there, 7. I'm pretty sure.
The command bar will give you 7 degrees nose high pitch. Okay. So when you hit toga, we'll put this in red for contrast. Then the airplane goes into GA mode. Okay?
Go around.
GA. Right. So the left side of this
is your heading.
Is your lateral. Correct. Is your lateral, we call it. So what is GA commanding me for lateral? It's not commanding you to heading because it's not in heading mode. What is our Garmin physically doing?
Keeping you straight.
It's commanding you wings level only.
Okay.
So if you happen to be ham-fisting this and fly off 20 degrees off,
it's going to keep you.
It's just going to keep your wings level, and you're going to remain 20 degrees off course a little bit. Okay. Lateral is what that is. The vertical gives you exactly 7 degrees. It's built for the SR-22 actually. So if you hold 7 degrees nose high for any long period of time in SR-20, you're probably going to dip below 85 a little bit. So I generally say, let's just put our pitch, my airplane pitch, up to about 5 degrees nose high is good, just like we would on a normal
If
takeoff.
you press the toga button while you're engaged in autopilot, it does it itself?
It does it itself. Thing of beauty. You go toga.
And you just give it power and it just flies you a go around?
It flies.
Really?
We'll do a couple go around. It's pretty
That
sweet.
sounds kind of scary almost, but...
It's.
I mean, I like the autopilot, so I don't think it would scare me, but I didn't know that was a thing.
What's
okay.
scary is if your autopilot's not programmed correctly.
Then you're, yeah.
I.e. you forgot to set your missed approach altitude to 2,000.
Yeah, and you're set at 1,100 or something. Yeah.